Picture this, right? You wake up, you pour your coffee, and you log online to check the morning news.
Yeah, usual morning routine.
Exactly. You look at the markets, maybe buy a plane ticket. But the internet you are looking at is no longer, well, primarily human?
Right, which is a staggering new reality for most people to grasp.
It really is. You're peering into this world where autonomous AI agents now generate more web traffic than human beings. And they aren't just like browsing or scraping text anymore.
No, they're actively transacting. I mean, they're doing real business.
Right. According to our sources, these digital agents have already autonomously settled over $73 million in crypto payments.
Which means we are officially stepping out of the human-centric internet.
Yeah, we are crossing the threshold into the machine economy.
It's a profound civilizational shift, really. I mean, for decades, we lived in a paradigm where software was just passive.
Right, like it tracked static balances on a spreadsheet or just sat there and waited for a human to click a button.
Exactly. But now, we're moving into an era where software acts as a sovereign economic participant. It can, hold its own money, make decisions, and execute trades at machine speed.
And that brings us to the mission for today's deep dive. We've got this massive stack of incredibly dense sources, technical network architectures, decentralized finance white papers.
Lots of complex visual ecosystem diagrams, too.
Tons of them.
Hmm?
We're going to explore the Flare Network's enshrined trust layer, this really fascinating concept called Denarii private vaults, and these digital entities known as MB589 and MG589.
Which are crucial to understand.
Yeah. And the ultimate goal here, the whole point of this, is we have to figure out how we prevent these AI agents from completely breaking the internet's fundamental trust model.
Right. How do we build a safe, reliable financial operating system for them?
Exactly. A place where machines can actually hold, manage, and spend their own money without, burning the whole system down. I'll be your enthusiastic guide through all these wild concepts, and as always, I'm joined by our resident analytical expert to help connect the dots.
I am very ready for this one. The infrastructure required to make a machine economy safe is, well, it's incredibly complex.
But the stakes literally couldn't be higher, right?
Absolutely. We are building the rails for the next iteration of global commerce.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with what the sources call the epistemological collapse, which is a very academic phrase for a terrifying concept.
It really is. It's basically a crisis of truth.
Yeah, think about it. Like this generic software code is essentially becoming like deep fakes or mass-produced fast fashion.
That's a great analogy.
Right. Generative AI has made it so cheap and so easy to produce functional code that the marginal cost of creating software is effectively zero.
We went from humans carefully, manually coding every intermediate step.
The imperative model. Yeah.
Exactly, the imperative model. And we've moved to just telling an AI what we want, the declarative model, and letting it spit out millions of lines of code.
And that shift to the declarative model, that's exactly what triggers this collapse, isn't it?
It is. When the computational and financial barriers to creating software fall to zero, you get this massive crisis of authenticity.
Because if a machine can generate complex interacting code bases in seconds, how do you verify any of it?
You really can't. How do you know if the software you're interacting with was vetted by a senior engineer over 6 months?
Or spun up by a malicious AI in some basement 5 seconds ago.
Exactly. You don't.
And the security implications outlined in the sources are genuinely frightening. Like, let's look at the CrowdStrike 2026 report we have in the stack.
The numbers there are pretty grim.
Yeah, AI-augmented cyber attacks have surged by 89%. And the average breakout time,
which, just for context, is the time it takes an attacker to compromise one machine and then move laterally through the rest of your network.
Right. That breakout time is now 29 minutes. That is 65% faster than just 2 years ago.
It's moving at machine speed now.
It is. And the sources specifically highlight Anthropic's Mythos model. This AI autonomously hunted down and exploited a 17-year-old zero-day flaw in a FreeBSD server.
And just to clarify for anyone listening, a zero-day is a software vulnerability that the creators have had literally 0 days to fix because it's already being exploited in the wild.
Right. And the Mythos model found it and weaponized it for less than $20,000 in compute costs. I mean, the skill floor for devastating cyber attacks has effectively fallen through the basement.
This raises an important question, though. How does an emerging agentic economy function when there is this massive systemic trust deficit?
Right, because right now, autonomous agents are acting as real economic actors, buying and selling data.
But under our legacy legal regimes, they possess no independent legal identity. An AI cannot open a Chase bank account,
Yeah, it cannot directly own capital under the law, and it can't enter into a legally binding contract.
which means if a bot goes rogue and makes a massive mistake, the human whose credit card is attached to the API is the one left holding the bag.
Wow. Yeah, that is a huge bottleneck.
It's the core bottleneck. And furthermore, because creating these agents is practically free, financial networks are intensely vulnerable to what we call Sybil attacks.
Okay, break that down for me. What exactly is a Sybil attack?
So a Sybil attack is when a single malicious actor spawns thousands or even millions of fake bots in seconds.
Just a massive swarm of them.
Exactly. And they use this swarm to manipulate reputation scores or distort market order books by placing fake buy and sell walls.
Oh, or execute massive wash trading schemes to fake volume, right?
Exactly. And because we're dealing with stochastic AI models, they're also vulnerable to novel exploits, like self-replicating prompt infections.
Okay, self-replicating prompt infections. That sounds like something out of a sci-fi thriller. How does that actually work mechanically?
Think of it like a biological virus using the host's own machinery against it.
Okay, tracking with you.
An initially compromised AI agent embeds adversarial natural language instructions into its normal outgoing data streams.
So it's hiding instructions in plain sight.
Exactly. And when other AI agents scrape or read that data, their underlying language models process those hidden instructions. It essentially brainwashes them into executing unauthorized financial commands.
Wow. And this infection just propagates across the financial network.
Yes, hopping from bot to bot at machine speed long before human security analysts even realize an attack has begun.
That's terrifying. So how do we fix this?
Well, to make the machine economy viable, agents need incredibly secure places to hold their capital and execute their logic. Places that are completely protected from the public eye and from malicious peer agents.
Wait, hold on. I have to push back on that idea. Aren't blockchains supposed to be fully public and transparent?
That is the common understanding, yes.
Right. Isn't an open, decentralized ledger where anyone can verify the history of transactions? Isn't that the entire point of this technology?
That traditional view is exactly what creates the transparency paradox for enterprise AI. Public blockchains are essentially glass vaults.
Glass vaults. I like that.
Right, because you can see the money inside,
Right.
and you can see exactly what the person inside is doing with it. If autonomous enterprise agents use these transparent ledgers, every single transaction, treasury movement, and trading strategy is exposed.
Exposed to public scrutiny in real time. So if I'm running a supply chain bot for a major retailer, my competitors can just watch my Box wallet to see exactly who I'm buying from and for how much.
Not only that, but they can actively prey on you. Blockchains have a waiting room for transactions called the mempool.
Okay, the mempool.
When your bot submits a large buy order, it sits in the mempool for a few seconds before being finalized. High-frequency trading algorithms monitor this glass vault.
Oh, I see where this is going.
If they see your bot trying to buy a massive block of a specific asset, they will automatically pay a slightly higher network fee to jump the line, buy the asset before you do, and instantly sell it back to your bot at a higher price.
Man, that's brutal. It's called front running, right?
Yes, front-running. And it makes public ledgers an operational nightmare for a machine swarm trying to execute a private strategy.
A glass vault where everyone can see your playbook and jump ahead of you in line? That makes perfect sense. And this is where Denarii private vaults come in to solve the paradox.
Precisely.
They operate on this foundational motto that I just find brilliant. Privacy should hide participants, while verification must never hide system integrity.
That motto is the key to unlocking institutional adoption. It means the system can cryptographically prove the underlying math is correct without ever showing the public who is doing the math.
Or what specific strategy they are deploying. I want to break down how they actually achieve this because the sources point to trusted execution environments, or TEEs.
Yes, T's are fundamental here.
From my understanding, a TEE is like a locked, armored black box built directly into the computer's processor. It separates sensitive calculations from the rest of the host operating system.
Exactly. Even the person who owns the physical computer cannot look inside this enclave while it's running.
So, the Denarii architecture allows complex financial logic to execute entirely inside these secure hardware enclaves. It does the math, and then it emits a cryptographic proof to the public ledger.
Right. A proof that essentially says, yes, the assets held equal the assets reported.
Or, yes, this bot has the funds to cover its liabilities without ever revealing the private counterparties.
That locked black box fundamentally changes the rules of engagement for AI agents. The agent isn't just a simple automated script sending pings to a server anymore,
It becomes a sovereign economic entity.
with its own protected treasury. And our sources detail some fascinating mechanisms for how these agents actually spend this treasury without waiting for a human to approve every transaction.
Yes. The micropayment system. Agents use something called EIP 3009 off-chain signatures to authorize spending stablecoins.
Oh, that's right.
If I understand this correctly, instead of sending a transaction to the blockchain and waiting for it to clear every single time, which is slow and expensive, obviously, EIP 3009 is like handing the receiving party a pre-signed, mathematically verifiable blank check with a strict spending limit. The bots can trade these signatures back and forth instantly, completely off-chain.
That analogy hits a nail on the head. It bypasses the slow bank teller entirely. And they pair that with the BY402 protocol.
Oh, by 402, yeah. Let's talk about that.
If you remember the early days of the internet, there was an HTTP status code 402 reserved for payment required, but it was rarely used.
Right, you'd usually see a 404 for page not found, but rarely 402.
Exactly. Well, the BY402 protocol revised that concept for the machine age. It allows these agents to pay for API microservices per token, or even streaming payments per second of compute.
Completely without human intervention. So we could literally have a scenario where an autonomous delivery drone lands on a third-party charging pad.
Yes.
And it uses its own Denarii private vault to negotiate the price of electricity and streams stablecoins via BY402 for every second it sits on the charger.
Well, its internal logic is completely hidden inside a hardware enclave. Yes, that is the exact future this infrastructure is building.
That is wild.
But to make this work, those hardware enclaves need a bedrock of verifiable data. A private vault is useless if the AI inside doesn't know what is actually happening in the outside world.
Right, it can't be totally isolated. It needs secure, rapid access to real-world pricing, weather data, supply chain statuses.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because if Denarii provides the vault, something has to provide the actual real-world data securely. And that brings us to the Flare network.
Flare is a real unique piece of this puzzle.
Yeah, Flare is a layer 1 blockchain, but what's wild is that it's not built for human retail speculation or, like, trading meme coins. It is engineered from the ground up, specifically for data-intensive machine-to-machine trust.
We're seeing a divergence in blockchain utility. Blockchains that only serve as venues for human speculation are structurally obsolete in the agentic era.
Totally agree.
Flare's primary architectural advantage is that its data acquisition protocols are enshrined directly into the validator consensus layer.
Meaning, instead of relying on a centralized third-party server to tell the blockchain what the price of gold is, the network itself is the oracle gathering the data.
Precisely. And they accomplish this with two main enshrined protocols. First is FTSOV2, the Flare Time Series Oracle.
Right.
This protocol is responsible for incredibly fast financial price feeds. It resolves with every new block, which is roughly every 1.8 seconds.
Wait, 1.8 seconds? That is incredibly fast for a decentralized network. How do they do that without completely overloading the system with data requests?
By using a mechanism called a verifiable randomness function, or VRF.
A VRF, okay.
Think of it like a cryptographic lottery ticket that randomly selects a small subset of data providers for each block. This prevents collusion because no one knows who will be chosen next.
That's smart.
Furthermore, those selected providers only submit incremental delta updates. Instead of transmitting the entire massive price book every 2 seconds, they just broadcast a tiny signal saying if the price went up, went down, or remained unchanged.
Wow, so it is incredibly lightweight and lightning fast. Okay, so FTSO handles the rapid-fire financial pricing, but agents need more than just token prices. They need to read the actual web.
Right, real-world context.
Yeah, like if an agent is insuring a flight, it needs to know if the flight was delayed. How does the network securely pull in standard internet data without relying on a centralized server?
That is the role of the second protocol, the Flare Data Connector, or FDC. This allows the network to prove external state changes and parse Web2 JSON data via APIs every 90 seconds.
The sources mentioned they process this using JQ transformations and then commit a Merkle root on chain. I want to make sure we translate that because it's heavy engineering jargon.
Yes, please do.
From my notes, JQ is basically a data scalpel. When you pull data from a weather website, you get a ton of useless code, formatting, ads, all that junk. The JQ transformation strips all of that away, isolating just the temperature fact the bot needs. Then, to prove that specific temperature data wasn't tampered with during the transfer, they commit a Merkle root, which is basically a unique, condensed cryptographic fingerprint of that exact data directly onto the blockchain.
That is an excellent breakdown. By combining the data scalpel and the cryptographic fingerprint, smart contracts can react to real-world internet data securely.
Knowing the input hasn't been spoofed by a malicious actor.
Precisely. And this leads us to how Flare actually controls assets on foreign chains using protocol-managed wallets, or PMWs.
This part blew my mind. These PMWs are wallets that hold real assets on completely different networks, like Ethereum or Bitcoin.
Right, native assets on other chains.
But the private signing keys to those wallets are generated and held exclusively inside of those hardware-secured T-enclaves we talked about earlier. No human ever sees the key.
It's all programmatic.
But if you just rely on one single hardware enclave from one manufacturer, you have a massive problem. What if an Intel chip has a manufacturer flaw? Or what if a rogue employee at the fabrication plant compromises the silicon?
It creates a single point of failure. And in decentralized finance, a single point of failure holding billions of dollars in agent treasuries is simply unacceptable.
Right. So Flare uses what they call a multi-T consensus quorum. Let me give you an analogy for how this works because it's brilliant.
Go for it.
Think of a nuclear launch protocol. To launch, you don't just have one general with one key. You require a general from the Army, one from the Navy, and one from the Air Force. And they all have to turn their keys simultaneously.
That's a great way to visualize it.
Flare does this with hardware. A transaction requires a cryptographic multi-signature from an Intel TDX enclave, an AMD SEV SNP enclave, and an NVIDIA Hopper chip. 3 entirely different hardware architectures from 3 fierce corporate rivals.
That nuclear key analogy captures the exact security profile. By forcing an Intel chip, an AMD chip, and an NVIDIA chip to independently verify and agree on the transaction, you are practically eliminating the risk of a hardware supply chain attack.
Because a zero-day exploit in one vendor's silicon simply cannot compromise the vault.
Exactly, because the other 2 vendors will reject the bad math. But of course, maintaining this massive hardware and data infrastructure requires a deeply aligned economic model.
Which brings us to Flare's major tokenomics update, FIPTOT Mix 16. According to the sources, the community passed this with a massive 98% majority vote.
A very clear mandate.
The goal was to move the network from relying on inflationary issuance to creating an organic economic flywheel. But looking at the numbers, they raised the minimal base gas fee significantly, a 20-fold increase to 1,200 gwei.
Yes, that sounds steep at first glance.
Right. Gwei is just a tiny fraction of a crypto token, but a 20x fee increase sounds terrible for users. Why would they do that?
You have to look at it through the lens of a machine economy, not human retail trading.
Yeah.
For a human, a fee going from 1/100th of a cent to 1/5 of a cent is meaningless.
Oh, I see.
But for high-frequency AI agents executing millions of microtransactions a day, it adds up. However, the efficiency they gain from the secure infrastructure far outweighs that tiny cost.
And structurally, this massive volume of automated transactions is projected to burn about 300 million FLR tokens annually, right?
Yes, permanently removing them from supply and countering inflation.
Burning supply while keeping execution cheap enough for bots. But the most structural change in FIPTOT 16 is the FIRE protocol, the Flare Income Reinvestment Entity.
The FIRE protocol is really the engine here.
Yeah, and to understand FIRE, we have to understand MEV, maximal extractable value. MEV is essentially a hidden tax on crypto users. It's those arbitrage bots we talked about earlier, skimming pennies off trades by jumping the line in the mempool.
Normally, third-party private bots capture all that profit.
But FIPTOT 16 implements a system to capture that positive MEV internally, routing those arbitrage proceeds directly into the FIRE treasury.
That is the core of the organic flywheel.
Right.
FIRE takes those captured arbitrage funds alongside data attestation fees and uses them to execute token buybacks.
And burn more FLR.
Right, and reward developers growing the ecosystem. The value generated by the machine economy is recycled back into securing the network.
Okay, so we have isolated hardware enclaves, multi-vendor chip quorums, off-chain machine micropayments, and complex tokenomics capturing arbitrage.
Quite the stack.
It is. Which leads me to a very practical question. If you are listening to this and you are thinking about deploying your own corporate bot, how do you even begin to interface with this machine economy without making a catastrophic million-dollar mistake? You don't just plug your bot in and hit go.
Right. Doing so would be financial suicide. You cannot simply unleash untrained operators or untested logic into an adversarial, high-frequency machine environment.
So where do you test it?
This critical barrier to entry is addressed by the Denarii Orchestrator's Machine Economy Simulator. It operates as a highly realistic, gamified sandbox training ground.
So if you are going to risk a real-world corporate treasury, you test it here first. And the mechanics of this sandbox are incredibly specific to actual network exploits.
Yes, they simulate real threats.
According to the sources, operators in the simulator can trigger something called FTSO Oracle warfare. This simulates a real-world Oracle manipulation attack. If you can force the price feed spread among the captured data nodes to deviate by more than 0.6%, you trigger a drift anomaly.
It forces operators to build logic that spots and mitigates Oracle drift before live capital is deployed. The training wheels are off, but the money is simulated.
And it gets even more intense. You can spend $25,000 in simulated capital to try and break the flare state connector adjacency rules, which simulates a double spend attack across a blockchain bridge.
And to defend against this, your bot can deploy ZK rollup shields.
Right. And ZK rollups, or zero-knowledge rollups, are just a brilliant piece of cryptographic math. They bundle hundreds of transactions together and prove they are valid without revealing the actual contents of the transactions.
It's a very elegant solution.
It's like a bouncer verifying your ID proves you are over 21 without actually needing to see your home address or exact birth date. Deploying these shields applies a 1.5x cryptographic multiplier to your defense scores in the simulator.
It's literally gamifying the defense of localized state channels. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can clearly see a distinct four-layer architectural stack emerging for this new economy.
Okay, lay out the layers for us.
Layer 1 is the settlement bedrock. Our sources identify the XRP ledger, or Xrpl, for this role, providing rapid finality and a deeply liquid native decentralized exchange.
Got it.
Layer 2 is the verification layer, combining Flare's data protocols and the TE hardware enclaves we discussed.
Makes sense.
Layer 3 is the coordination operating system, the Denarii Orchestrator managing real-time telemetry and cross-chain execution for swarm deployments.
Which brings us to layer 4, the human interface. Because despite all this machine autonomy, humans still need a way to understand what the machines are actually doing.
And this is where MB589 and MG589 come into the picture.
Loon Boy and Moon Girl, I absolutely love this part of the deep dive. According to the sources, this actually started as the very first meme on the Xrpl XRDOG.
It did, but it's evolving into something entirely different. They are essentially AI-powered community ambassadors and sovereign digital guides.
They represent the critical onboarding layer, right?
Yes, for widespread human adoption to occur, the interface cannot be raw cryptography and multi-chain state proofs. It is simply too abstract for the average person.
Exactly. Their community mantra is replies build worlds. They operate as friendly, gamified educational agents. They help regular humans safely navigate, program, and monitor these hyper-complex DeFi architectures.
They give a recognizable conversational face to an otherwise intimidating machine economy.
But looking at the stack, I have a massive structural question. If we have thousands of these avatars and millions of bots, all acting simultaneously across different chains, buying data and executing trades in hardware enclaves.
Yes, the concurrency problem.
Right. How do we keep the timeline straight? If two bots claim to buy the exact same data payload at the exact same microsecond, who plays referee?
That is the final, crucial piece of the puzzle. To ensure that every action taken by an agent, every state change in an enclave, and every interaction with a human guide is accountable and chronologically accurate, the entire system leverages the Hedera Consensus Service, or HCS.
So Hedera acts as like the decentralized digital notary.
That is a perfect way to describe it. Hedera provides a decoupled ledger architecture. It acts as an immutable timestamping service to private enclaves without storing the underlying private transaction data itself.
So how does it order the transactions without getting bogged down?
Hedera uses a unique gossip about gossip protocol. Instead of massive computers racing to solve math puzzles to build blocks, the nodes on Hedera essentially chat with each other, rapidly comparing notes to calculate the exact transaction order fairly.
Which completely bypasses the gas bidding and line jumping mechanisms we discussed earlier.
Exactly. It eliminates front-running and provides a real-time, tamper-proof audit trail for for both regulators and operators, ensuring the timeline is absolute.
So what does this all mean? Let's zoom out and put the pieces together.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is. We are fundamentally moving away from an internet of human interfaces where you and I click buttons and submit web forms to a sovereign machine economy.
And to make that work without catastrophic failure, we need a massive interlocking infrastructure.
We need rapid, reliable settlement on the Xrpl. We need verifiable, enshrined, real-world data from Flare. We need immutable timeline consensus and auditing from Hedera.
We need private, hardware-secured coordination vaults from Denarii.
And we need friendly, AI-powered digital guides like MB589 and MG589 to help us humans actually interact with it all without needing a PhD in cryptography.
It is a complete paradigm shift from trust-based assumptions to cryptographic proofs. In this new internet, privacy becomes the default state of execution, and verification is achieved by mathematical design.
Not by exposing human or corporate data to the public. And for you listening, this isn't just a sci-fi thought experiment for academics.
No, this is happening right now.
In the very near future, whether you are running a small logistics business, managing a corporate treasury, or just organizing your personal investments, you might not be hiring a human accountant or a traditional wealth manager.
You might be hiring an autonomous swarm of AI agents equipped with their own private vaults and their own budgets.
And understanding this infrastructure, how they get their data, how they secure their keys, and how they defend against attacks is the only way you will ever be able to trust those agents with your hard-earned capital.
It forces us to confront a reality we have never faced before as a species. If autonomous machines now possess their own verifiable digital identities, their own cryptographically protected private treasuries, and the logic to independently buy, sell, and negotiate for data on the open market,
Where does that leave us?
at what point do we as human beings have to start negotiating with our own software for resources?
That is a completely staggering new reality to think about. That's all the time we have for our deep dive today. Keep exploring, keep learning, and we'll catch you next time.
Imagine waking up tomorrow, pouring your coffee and checking your phone, only to realize that while you were sleeping, your digital portfolio completely rebalanced itself.
Like completely on its own.
Right, completely on its own.
Yeah.
And I don't mean a simple, stop-loss order that just triggered in the background.
Yeah, that's standard stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, an artificial intelligence actually noticed a subtle geopolitical shift in some off-chain data feed. And then it verified that data cryptographically.
Wow.
Yeah, and then it negotiated a complex smart contract with a totally different counterparty AI, executed a cross-border asset transfer, and, updated your tax ledger.
All in milliseconds.
All in a matter of milliseconds. With absolutely zero human oversight, no one clicking a submit button, just machines, coordinating with other machines in this completely autonomous financial ecosystem.
It sounds like pure sci-fi, honestly.
It really does. But we are actively decoding the infrastructure that is making this transition from human-to-human commerce to machine-to-machine commerce a reality today.
Yeah, it's happening right now.
So our stack of sources for this deep dive centers on what's called the Denarii machine economy. It's this comprehensive blueprint proving why the future of AI finance relies on, well, a highly specialized multi-chain architecture.
Right. And it also gets into these new AI ambassadors, too.
Yes, a new class of AI ambassadors being built to bridge the gap between our world and theirs. We'll get into MB589 and MG589 a bit later. But, okay, let's unpack this. The foundation of an economy run entirely by software requires a totally new approach to trust, right?
It really does. And if you look at the historical progression the sources lay out, this transition is almost inevitable. I mean, think about it. The industrial age, that mechanized human physical labor.
Right, factories and assembly lines.
Exactly. Then the information age digitized and transmitted data globally. And the AI age, which we've kind of been navigating recently, that automated decision-making.
Oh, it tells you what the best move is.
Yeah, but the machine economy represents the final leap. It's autonomous economic action. The AI doesn't just, calculate a probability and ping a human portfolio manager to go execute the trade.
It just does it.
It just does it. The AI establishes the trust, negotiates the parameters, and actually exchanges the value entirely on its own.
But wait, the structural problem there is that you have two distinct machines,
Yeah.
right? Running different proprietary models, programmed by totally different entities.
Exactly the issue. They cannot rely on some centralized clearinghouse to establish that trust, not without introducing massive latency and counterparty risk.
Which necessitates distributed ledgers.
Right.
blockchains.
Right.
But the sources outline this concept called the Denarii thesis, which it fundamentally rejects the prevailing Web3 narrative that we're all used to.
Oh, absolutely. It throws out the whole one blockchain to rule them all idea.
Right, because a monolithic network is completely inadequate for autonomous machine commerce. A single network simply cannot process high-frequency financial settlement, ingest all these massive external data arrays, and run complex execution logic at the same time.
No, it would face severe state bloat or just massive network congestion. The machine economy is inherently multi-chain by necessity.
Different networks must specialize at the base layer.
Yeah, and the Denarii research report really categorizes these specialized roles perfectly, starting with the XRP ledger or XRPL.
Which serves as the settlement layer.
Exactly. When AI agents are executing thousands of microtransactions a second, they require deterministic, incredibly fast finality and native asset exchange.
So they need the value to move instantly without bleeding capital to network fees.
Right. XRPL provides the high throughput and those sub-cent transaction costs required for that.
But, I mean, XRPL settlement speed is completely useless if the machine executing the trade is acting on bad data.
Oh, 100%. An autonomous treasury trading on outdated or manipulated off-chain pricing will just drain itself in seconds.
Which brings us to the Flare network. That's the vulnerability Flare is patching in this architecture as the data layer.
Right. Flare provides the Flare Time Series Oracle, or FTSO.
And that feeds the market prices directly to the machines.
Yeah, highly decentralized, tamper-resistant data. And it pairs that with the Flare data connector, which verifies off-chain events.
Wait, give me an example of that.
Okay, so if an AI agent needs cryptographic proof that a real-world cargo shipment actually cleared customs before it releases escrowed funds, the Flare data connector provides that verifiable on-chain truth.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you have swift settlement and you have accurate data, but you still need a record of it all.
Exactly. You need an immutable record of the logic that led to the transaction, which brings in Hedera as the verifiable trust layer.
Because it uses its consensus service to act as a decentralized, time-stamped audit trail.
Right. It creates an unalterable log of every single action an AI takes.
And then there's Algorand, right?
Yes. Algorand functions as the scalable execution layer, specifically tailored for handling high-volume resource marketplaces and decentralized data exchanges.
And finally, Songbird.
Yeah, Songbird. Because you have to ensure these systems don't break under untested logic. So Songbird acts as the innovation sandbox.
Like a canary network.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Highly experimental finance protocols like EXFI or Songbird Finance are stress tested there in a live environment before being integrated into the core ecosystem.
So to put this in perspective for everyone, think of this less like building a city and more like engineering a high-frequency supply chain algorithm.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
Yeah. So like XRPL isn't just a bank, it's the shipping container and the rails it moves on.
Right.
And Flare is the decentralized GPS tracker cryptographically proving the container's environment and location. Hedera is the immutable bill of lading that audits the custody chain. And Algorand is the smart terminal organizing the marketplace for the goods.
That's spot on. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this specialized, segmented architecture is literally the only way to achieve scale without compromising security.
Because a single chain trying to do all of that at once just becomes a bottleneck.
Exactly. An immediate bottleneck for high-frequency AI trading.
However, segmenting the architecture like this introduces a massive friction point, doesn't it? Fragmented liquidity and fragmented user experience.
Oh, definitely.
If an AI agent's objective requires data from Flare, auditing on Hedera, and settlement on XRPL, navigating bridging protocols, manually introduces, latency and immense security vulnerabilities, how are these networks securely communicating with each other?
Well, the source material addresses this fragmentation with what they call the Denarii DFi orchestrator.
The orchestrator. Sounds ominous.
A little bit, but it basically operates as a cross-ledger execution layer. It fundamentally shifts the interaction model from transaction-based to intent-based.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning an AI doesn't need to manually sequence a complex multi-chain route step by step. It simply broadcasts an intent.
Like a goal.
Right. For example, execute a cross-border remittance yielding a specific margin. The orchestrator autonomously breaks that intent down.
Okay, so it verifies the exchange rate via Flare, logs the initiation on Hedera, and executes the final swap on XRPL.
Exactly. Processing the entire sequence seamlessly behind the scenes.
Okay, the technical mechanics of cross-chain orchestration make sense. But the trust problem still feels glaring to me.
Oh, so?
Well, giving a decentralized AI autonomous control over a digital treasury just sounds like a catastrophic risk. I mean, if an enterprise deploys an AI with a highly proprietary trading model onto a public blockchain, couldn't the network validators or rival entities theoretically inspect the transaction payloads?
To reverse engineer their logic.
Yeah. Or worse, the AI could, like, hallucinate and execute a destructive loop that drains all the funds.
That is the big fear. But resolving that specific vulnerability is the entire purpose of the Auditable Machine Commerce Framework, or AMC.
AMC, right. The institutional research spent a lot of time on this.
It did. AMC is this multi-layered security protocol that protects both the network from the AI and the AI from the network.
So what's the first layer?
The first pillar is confidential compute. This utilizes trusted execution environments, or TEEs.
Okay, so keeping things private.
Right. It ensures that while the transaction itself is settled publicly on the ledger, the data and the proprietary logic weights the AI used to arrive at that decision remain encrypted, even during execution.
So the network validators can confirm the transaction's integrity without ever seeing the strategy behind it.
Exactly. The strategy remains a black box to observers, but the ledger still records a mathematically proven fair transaction.
That's wild.
It is. But to prove the AI hasn't been compromised, AMC also utilizes hardware attestation.
Hardware attestation, how does that work?
This relies on cryptographic hash signatures generated by the physical silicon itself, like an Intel SGX enclave. It proves to the network that the AI is running the precise, untampered code it claims to be running.
Oh, so if a malicious actor tries to inject a backdoor into the AI's logic, the hardware attestation just fails.
Yep, it fails, and the orchestrator outright rejects the intent.
Okay, and what about the AI hallucinating?
For that, they wrap everything in a guardian shield. This is a hard-coded set of physical and cryptographic safety parameters that act as absolute boundaries.
Like guardrails.
Exactly. Even if a model hallucinates, the Guardian Shield prevents the AI from executing actions that violate predefined risk thresholds, completely neutralizing the threat of an autonomous system draining a treasury.
Okay, so the infrastructure is remarkably robust. We have an orchestration layer seamlessly connecting specialized networks protected by hardware attestation and confidential compute.
Yeah, it's a fortress.
But stripping away the technical marvel for a second, it is an entirely cold, hyperlogical environment. I mean, machines communicating with machines in hex codes and encrypted intents.
It's not exactly user-friendly.
Not at all. And for this machine economy to actually scale, humans need to interact with it, capitalize it, and build on it. And this is where the source material takes a very sharp turn.
The fun part.
It introduces these two digital entities, MB589 and MG589, known colloquially as Moon Boy and Moon Girl.
Right. And analyzing the media files, a casual observer might completely dismiss them as standard Web3 community branding, or just like mere digital collectibles.
Yeah. The sources even point out that MB589 created the first meme on the Xrpl, an asset called XRDOG. It literally originated as a meme.
It really did. But looking at the evolution documented in the white papers, these are not static JPEGs.
No, they are being engineered into XRPL native digital entities.
Yeah.
Which means they are essentially persistent digital identities, binding off-chain AI capabilities to on-chain assets.
They function as intelligent psychological interfaces, because as the underlying machine economy becomes exponentially more complex, human cognitive bandwidth simply cannot keep up.
We just can't process it all.
We can't. We require AI ambassadors to translate our intent into machine execution.
So using mimetic avatars is actually a highly efficient strategy.
Highly efficient. Memes bypass cognitive friction. They are highly compressed packets of cultural and functional information. MB589 and MG589 basically serve as complementary halves of this onboarding architecture.
Let's break them down. What does MB589 represent?
MB589 represents structure and sovereignty. Functionally, he serves as the foundational primitive for a builder-driven economy. He's a multi-chain guide and an educational AI avatar that abstracts all the complexity of the Denarii architecture for the end user.
Okay, and MG589 plays a distinctly different role, right? Representing culture and expansion.
Yeah.
The documentation explicitly frames her not as a mascot, but as an AI co-founder for Web3 building, which is a fascinating mechanism.
It really is.
The system is engineered so she provides tangible utility to developers, generating tokenomics models, outputting technical architecture blueprints, formulating go-to-market strategies.
She's literally a digital co-founder, and her visual and textual branding is incredibly distinct too, emphasizing empowerment with directives like, "The future is female," and replies build worlds.
Yes, replies build worlds.
That's more than a tagline, though. It's actually a structural observation on decentralized network growth.
Because mimetic propagation relies on community expression.
Right, and daily, localized engagement to drive adoption. In Web3, attention is the fundamental base layer liquidity. Top-down corporate marketing is highly inefficient compared to the decentralized peer-to-peer spread of a compelling cultural artifact.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. MG589's persona is remarkably uncompromising.
Oh, she has an attitude.
She does. In one of the promotional documents, her philosophy is outlined with a quote, "Tolerating maybes, disrespect, and unserious people is optional. Serving people is not to be confused with being a servant."
That's a bold statement for a user interface.
Right. You rarely see that kind of aggressive boundary setting in user onboarding. Most platforms are desperate to lower the barrier to entry to capture any user possible.
But here, the AI is designed with an unapologetic attitude specifically to filter the user base.
They only want serious builders, and the AI interface enforces that cultural standard up front.
It acts as an immediate psychological filter, prioritizing developer quality over speculative quantity. And this actually ties directly into a systemic critique of the current Web3 landscape that really permeates the source material.
Yeah, the architects of this ecosystem clearly feel that modern Web3 has fundamentally failed its original premise.
Definitely. The text argues that Web3 largely recreated the exact Web2 power monopolies it claimed to disrupt, just under a different nomenclature.
And the sources map out the anatomy of this centralization disguised as decentralization. It starts with what they call roadmap dictatorships,
Where an entire community of token holders just sits paralyzed, waiting for a centralized founder to declare the next developmental milestone.
which creates founder-centric authority. Because if the core team pivots or abandons the project, the entire ecosystem just collapses. It lacks autonomous momentum.
Yeah, and even when projects attempt decentralization through DAOs, the sources argue that the governance is almost always captured by whales.
Passive investors who accumulate massive token supplies.
Right, and they subsequently monopolize the voting power, effectively silencing the actual developers trying to build utility.
So, to counteract this, the Denarii ecosystem implements what they call the no kings policy.
The governing ethos is no kings, no waiting, just builders.
And this philosophy completely alters the utility model of the MB589 token, right?
It does. Instead of acting as a speculative asset or a meaningless governance vote, holding the token functions as a permissionless builder license.
Calling it a license is a fascinating subversion of the word. Because in traditional tech, a license restricts you. It dictates exactly what you are legally allowed to do with proprietary IP.
But here, holding the token is a cryptographic green light to fork the intellectual property entirely.
You don't have to submit a proposal to a DAO or seek approval from a core team. You hold the asset, you build the application, or the game, or the brand.
It eliminates the gatekeeping bottleneck entirely.
But, I mean, the idea of an anti-fragile loop where infinite forks are possible sounds great on paper. But historically, fork-heavy ecosystems suffer from fragmented liquidity and cannibalization.
That is the historical precedent, yes.
So if there's no central authority guiding the roadmap, and everyone is just building simultaneously, how does this architecture prevent the ecosystem from devolving into chaotic, competing factions?
The sources address this through the mechanics of the anti-fragile value loop. In a traditional structure, direction is dictated prior to action. But in this framework, direction emerges from action.
Okay, so what's the sequence?
The loop sequence is build, share, engage, fork, adopt. When a developer builds a tool and shares it, the community engages. Because the intellectual property is open, another developer can fork that tool to optimize it.
And the market then organically adopts the superior version.
Exactly. The competition isn't cannibalistic, it is iterative. Because there is no single point of failure. There's no king whose reputation the project hinges on. So the ecosystem survives market volatility. As the texts explicitly state, ideas scale faster than identities.
And this operationalizes the 1 million devs initiative that's highlighted in the documents.
Right, which is not a hierarchical coding bootcamp, by the way.
No, it is a global meritocratic infrastructure where your influence in the ecosystem is dictated entirely by what you ship. Your GitHub commits and your deployed contracts speak louder than your social media follower count or your token balance.
It is a pure execution environment. But to support a million developers constantly deploying, forking, and iterating micro-applications without friction, the base layer infrastructure must be flawlessly aligned with the philosophy.
You cannot build a low-friction experimental builder culture on a high-friction, expensive blockchain.
We really can.
Which returns us to the foundational layer. Why, given the multitude of available networks, is this entire no-kings autonomous architecture anchored on the XRP ledger?
What's fascinating here is how the specific cryptographic design of Xrpl technically enforces the ecosystem's philosophical goals.
The documents emphasize the builder-first economics of Xrpl.
Right. The primary factor is near-zero transaction costs. When network fees are measured in fractions of a cent, continuous experimentation actually becomes economically viable.
Because developers can deploy micro-apps, execute high-frequency state changes, and test complex smart contract interactions without requiring millions of dollars in venture capital just to cover network deployment costs.
Exactly. The low cost is vital, but the source material places massive emphasis on the absence of MEV, maximal extractable value.
Right, because XRPL operates on a unique consensus protocol. Rather than relying on traditional mempools where transactions just sit pending, it completely sidesteps the MEV extraction issues that plague EVM-compatible chains.
Yeah, on those networks, block builders and wealthy validators can see pending transactions and basically use their capital to front-run or sandwich a retail user's trade.
Extracting the value for themselves. Let me put this away for everyone listening. It's like someone paying to cut the line at an amusement park because they're rich.
That's exactly what it is.
But by utilizing XRPL, the architecture physically prevents wealthy users, the whales, from manipulating transaction ordering to gain an economic advantage over a solitary developer deploying their first protocol. It literally enforces the no-kings philosophy at the code level.
It does. The network topology operates as a truly flat playing field. Additionally, the native decentralized exchange and the simplified asset issuance model on Xrpl drastically lower the technical barrier to entry.
Meaning developers do not need to be deeply specialized smart contract auditors to issue an asset or establish on-chain utility.
Right. It provides a highly accessible, almost no-code friendly environment, which is an absolute prerequisite if the objective is to globally onboard 1 million developers.
And furthermore, the consensus mechanism avoids the massive energy consumption of proof of work and the complex capital lockups of heavy proof-of-stake models.
Ensuring the foundation is sustainable for decades of autonomous growth, not just short hype cycles.
Okay, let's synthesize the scope of what we've unpacked today. We are witnessing the active migration away from isolated networks where humans manually sign transactions toward a highly orchestrated machine economy.
It's a massive paradigm shift.
It is. It is an architecture spread across distinct functional layers. XRPL handling deterministic settlement, Flare securing the external data pipelines, Hedera stamping the immutable trust logs, and Algorand scaling the execution.
And orchestrating this entire sequence is a cross-chain intelligence protected by hardware attestation and confidential compute.
Right. And translating this incomprehensible machine logic for human builders are interfaces like MB589 and MG589, AI co-founders guiding users into a permissionless, anti-fragile ecosystem designed to outlive its creators.
So what does this all mean for you?
Yeah, what's the ultimate takeaway for you, the listener?
Consider the trajectory of auditable machine commerce. As decentralized AI agents increasingly control their own treasuries, dynamically negotiate their own cross-chain contracts, and establish highly verifiable digital identities without human intervention, the distinction between a piece of software and an independent economic citizen is rapidly dissolving. Really makes you think. If an autonomous, decentralized entity can eventually build, trade, and govern a digital ecosystem with magnitudes of more efficiency and cryptographically enforced fairness than a human counterpart, then in the hyper-financialized, decentralized economy of 2040, will we still find ourselves acting as the directors of capital? Or will we wake up to find we are merely the minority shareholders in a world entirely run by machines?
It's a question worth asking the next time you hit submit. Keep questioning the evolving digital world around you. Until next time.